All right, a very good afternoon to everyone, and I think it's still morning at Pakistan, and it's our pleasure. It's my pleasure actually to have this Dr. Aftab from Pakistan to going to share the one of the research work and especially on the application of econometrics, applied econometrics, and some, the topics that they're going to be presented by him. So the attendees, especially here today, right now in this online Zoom class, will be mostly, all of them actually are the students that taking the subjects of mine called modeling in economics. So we studied mostly emphasizing on time series econometrics and emphasize on the application of econometrics, certainly in the research in economics and related field. Right. So I'll pass the floor to you, Dr. Aftab. You can try to share your screen. If you cannot share the screen, you tell me. I can make you host so that you can share the screen if you have slides.
All right, Prof. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and good afternoon. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, I can see your screen. I can see your screen.
All right.
But we can't see your face.
Oh, just a while, please.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Good.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Avan, for this invitation and giving me opportunity to share this work. In fact, this is our collaborative work, and this is with Prof. Avan Lau, as well as we have two other co-authors, Izlan Ismail and Abola. So basically, this work is published in Bursa Istanbul Review, and the professor was interested that I should deliver a lecture on it, particularly on non-linear ARDL. So because we have application of that technique in this paper, so that's why we decided that we should go through it. So this is something like application class, so this make a lot of relevance. So basically, first of all, I introduce myself. Basically, I have a PhD from University of Malaya. Currently, I'm serving as assistant professor in COMSATS University in Islamabad. I have over 15 years of experience, and I have on my credit 33 publications, which are in some good referred journals. I have been the holder of Bright Spark Fellowship of University of Malaya. I am also working as an associate editor of Iranian Journal of Management Studies, and I have an opportunity to review a lot of research papers of peer-reviewed journals. Anyway, coming to the topic, basically, first of all, I would like to tell you the story, a brief story of this topic, that basically it was in 1970s when we had a fixed exchange rate regime. But at that time, there was a transition, and many economies decided to transit from fixed exchange rate to float exchange rate regime. So this transition led to a lot of new research that was interested to explain how this interest rate behave. So there were a lot of models like macroeconomic models, and they tried a lot to explain it, but finally the main crunk of those exercises was put by Merzi and Ragov in 1983, and they come with this, that available all the models are nothing more than zero performance. Rather, a simple random walk models work better than these available macroeconomic models. So this was the issue, that it was quite difficult to explain the exchange rates. So having this problem, there was an emergence of another it's a trend of research. We call it microstructure. Basically, the main guru of this line, O'Hara, she defined it that basically this microstructure is the process and the outcome of exchanging assets under explicit trading rules. So basically, the relevance of this process, how this relate to the exchange rate is the main thing that we are focusing in our research, that is order flow. Basically, order flow is the one that is centered on the trading process. So there's a very encouraging research by the peoples like Evans and Lyons in 2002 that they come with this, that the order flow have a lot of power to explain the exchange rates. So that's why there's a great interest in order flows, that how they can be used to explain the exchange rates. So before we move to that, it is quite relevant that what is order flow? Basically, this is the net balance of buyer initiated and seller initiated foreign exchange market transactions. So this way, basically, this is an indicator of buying and selling pressure on a given currency that will affect the spot exchange rate. So in this way, buying and selling pressure explains that how the spot exchange rate is going to behave. So basically, existing research was more focused on mature economies, and they took more major currency pairs. But there was very few studies that investigated the potential role of order flow for emerging economies. So the economies like Asian emerging markets make a lot of relevance because there's a lot of concern regarding the exchange rates here. You can see from these graphs, basically these are the graphs of 9 sample economies that we have used in our analysis. So you can see here, sorry, uh, is there any question?
No, I think this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. So here you can see this, that there's a lot of volatility in the exchange rates. Basically, these are the exchange rate behavior over the 7 years of sample that we have used for our this research. So in this way, basically, the main contribution of our research is that this research expands emerging market literature, and emerging markets are more volatile as compared to advanced markets. So there's a lot of interest that how we can explain, how we can use this useful macro structure models to explain the exchange rates. So in this paper, basically, we construct a currency order flow by using a tick by tick high frequency data that is like 15 minutes. And beside this, the main thing that is of interest of our today's lecture is that we look on the asymmetric effects of order flows. This aspect is basically really studied in the existing literature, and this is a very interesting, and I would like to talk about it in some more details. Basically, our normal models, like linear models, they have an assumption that there is a symmetry. But in the case that this symmetry doesn't hold, so whatever we are getting through the estimates is not so relevant. So first of all, this is something like this, that if we are talking about order flows and exchange rates, so it is something like this, that if there is a certain 2% increase in the order flows or the 2% decrease in the order flows, according to this symmetry assumption, it is expected that it would have an equal increase or decrease in the order flow, in the spot exchange rate. But in a case that when the same magnitude of increase or decrease have a different impact on the spot exchange rate, then basically it's not so good to use symmetric models to study these kind of things. There's a lot of other things that explain that there's the asymmetry in the financial markets. Like you know about this, that sometimes there are particular expectations, and then when these expectations dominate, so the behavior of markets is not like linear, or sometimes when there's intervention by the central bank in the forex market. So these things make more like non-linear behavior. Besides this, there's a lot of classical literature, like Keynes in 1936 studied this, and he come with this, that the behavior of economic variables is more like that the recessions are very frequent, and when we study the recessions, basically recovery is slower as compared to the downturns. So in this way, the behavior of economic variables is more like asymmetric. So beside this, focusing on asymmetry, we also check the forecasting capability of these linear and non-linear models, because our interest is to promote this non-linear. So we are interested that how this non-linear is superior as compared to linear. So that's why we also use some forecasting evaluations. This is basically the main contribution of our this research. So a brief discussion about sample and methods. Basically, we have a sample of 9 emerging markets. Basically, this classification is on the basis of MSCI classifications for emerging markets. So these are China, India, Indonesia, and so on. The sample period is basically Delhi period from 2010 to 2016. This is almost 7 years. So the way we basically measure or define this order flow is same like defined by Evan and Lyons, that this is the net of buyer initiated and seller initiated orders in the foreign exchange market. So in this way, basically, we first of all created order flows for a 15-minute interval. So then we summed it up to daily frequency, because we have spot exchange rates in daily frequency. It's more interesting to study the exchange rates at daily frequency as compared to so a high frequency, because there's a lot of noise when we have a more higher frequency. This is a bit more meaningful that we have some more information using the daily frequency. So our sources of data were basically Bloomberg's and Thomson Reuters. This is our main model. Basically, this model comes from the literature that we have this our dependent variable, that is exchange rate, and we have independent and control variables like order flow, and then we have interest rate differentials, and then we have country risk premium. So basically, as I described earlier, the way we measure the order flow, this exchange rate is basically taken in terms of emerging market currency per 1 unit of US dollar. So the measurement of other variables like interest rate differential is the difference of overnight interest rates between the emerging market and the United States. In the same way, this country risk premium is also the difference of country risk premium of the sample market and of United States. So basically, to estimate this model, we are using two approaches, ARDL and NARDL. Basically, as we want to make sure this that we don't miss the opportunity to compare the results. Otherwise, there's a lot of literature reasoning that support that we can use NARDL, but it's more rational that we use both approaches and then we compare them. And then we come with this that which approach gave us more exposure regarding the relationship. So before we move on, I would put this questions of ARDL, that here you can see this, that we can differentiate this our standard model into short term and the long term. Basically, the short terms are the ones which are with this delta signs, and the long terms are with this the legs. Basically, the way we gather our coefficient is that we first of all take this normalizations, and then we do this that how this coefficients are telling anything. But before that, it's quite essential that the Pisaran, basically the one who suggested this ARDL, he suggests this that we conduct F test. Basically, F test is a test to judge the co-integration. So you know about this, that co-integration is necessary for the establishment of short-run and long-run effects. Basically, once we know this, that there's a co-integration, then we can talk about this short-run and long-run effects. In the same way, basically, when we move from ARDL to NARDL, the thing we do basically, because we are interested in order flows asymmetric effects. So what we do basically, we take this order flow variable and segregate into partial sum positive and partial sum negatives. Way is basically very simple, that we create a change series, and out of change series basically we take for max, this help us to take positive changes, and for minimum it help us to take negative or declines. So basically, after creating or segregating order flow variable into the two variables of increase and decrease, we put this in the same previous model, and we have a model like this one. So here you can see this, that we have two variables for the short run as well as for the long run for order flows. So basically, Shin 2014 say this, that non-linear ARDL is also like linear in terms of the way we test it. That first of all, we go for the test of co-integrations, and if a co-integration is established, then we go for the short run and long run effects. So basically, short run effects are gathered from this delta sign OF positive and OF negative, and the negative ones are the long runs are gathered from this beta 2 and beta 3. So having this operationalized form, then our focus is on that is the effect is symmetric or asymmetric. Basically, Bahmani Oskay say this, that we can establish asymmetric effect if the sign of partial sum positive and partial sum negative is different, or the size of coefficient or the legs associated to the coefficients are different. We can establish this, that is asymmetric effect. Having this background, basically now I share the results. These are the results of ARDL. So here you can see this, that our order flow variables in the short run is positive for the first one, but later on it's become negative. Although we expect this on the basis of theory that order flow have a positive effect on exchange rate. But here on the subsequent legs, we see this, the coefficient is negative for the short run estimates. Basically, this tells this that this might be something like intervention by the central bank, or some something like inefficiencies in the foreign exchange markets of emerging markets, as well as there's also possibility of something like we call a negative feedback mechanism, where the peoples are normally in emerging market more interested to sell dollars when the dollar appreciate. So basically, this leads to a negative relationship between order flows and the spot exchange rates. But moving to the long run estimates for order flow, we can see that the effect is positive and significant. So this is the results which are for linear ARDLs, and we have used some diagnostics. Basically, they support the appropriateness of these models in most cases. So here we have the estimates for non-linear ARDL. So here you can note this, that we have more exposure to the relationship, that basically in previous cases there was a lot of cases where we had a negative coefficient associated with the order flows in the short run on later legs. But here you can see this, that there's some cases, but in many cases we note this, that the coefficient of order flow is positive in the subsequent legs. So this tells us something like this, that perhaps our linear model have ignored this, that there is something like non-linearity in the relationship. So when we use a proper model, we come with more information that this is something like the issue of modeling rather than the relationship that we were previously concluding that there is some inefficiencies in the foreign exchange market or central bank interventions or negative feedback mechanism. But in the long run, both relationship for uh, positive order flows and negative order flows are the same as in the linear model. So this basically substantiate the main expected relationship that the order flows have a positive impact on spot exchange rate. Again, we tested for the appropriateness of the model by using diagnostics. So basically, beside this, they are telling something more. We were also interested to look on that is there asymmetries or not. So first of all, the first few criterion suggested by Bahamni or Skoi are very subjective that just you can look on and you compare this that if the legs are different, so we can see this that there is some adjustment asymmetry or something if the sign of positive sum of values is different than the negative we can but beside this we have a test that we call this wall test and we basically test these assumptions of short run and long run coefficients that either they are same or different. On the basis of this, when we go for the testing of coefficients, so we come with this that in the short run, there are many cases like India, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, and so on, where we have asymmetric effects of order flows in the short run. In the long run, as well, we note for China, Malaysia, and Pakistan, Singapore, and Thailand that the long run effect of order flow is asymmetric. So there's a lot of cases where we note this that there's asymmetry in the relationship. So that's uh, 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 suggests this that it's interesting to look on the relationships, either they are linear or not, and then use the appropriate modeling. Having done this, final goal of our research was to test that forecasting capability of our models, linear models and non-linear models, and to come with this that what are the models which more superior. So we use this TIC or tail inequality coefficient. So we can see that there was many cases like China, India, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, and so on, where the uh, efficiency of non-linear model was more in forecasting as compared to linear. So this again, this is just the more relevance of appropriate models to study the relationships. This is a brief about our results. On this way, we can conclude our research that basically our research tells us that basically order flows are very relevant to study the spot exchange rates in emerging markets and basically the way this was the insight of our research that the way this exchange rate is affected by the order flows is asymmetric rather than symmetric in many cases. So in this way, basically, our study tried to reconcile the earlier that although the relationship, the way order flows affect the exchange rate is positive, but there is also something like that. We should care about the asymmetries that help us to exploit more information from the order flows. Comparing our research with the other relevant studies like Evans and Lyons, we note this that our explanatory power of our models is lower as compared to Evans and Lyons, and this is perhaps all due to the sample that we are using emerging market sample, and you know about this that emerging market sample is uh, the one where it's very frequent that the central bank is having interventions in the forex market, so that's why the explanatory power of order flows is affected. So this is all about this paper. So I would like to know uh, uh, if you have any questions, please.
Thank you very much for keeping up with the time so that we can have perhaps more discussion on what should be. I mean, on the paper itself, right? Yeah. So there is. Yeah. Any question from anyone inside this group? today. For Dr. Aftab here, it's a chance for you to ask, especially about the asymmetric of using the nonlinear ARDL. You can ask, related to that particular estimation or idea behind of asymmetric. If you want to know further, that you can use for your final year project research later. So it's a chance for any one of you to ask any question. You can open up your mic if you want to ask question, or you can type in the chat box if you are too shy to speak up. Right. So, right, anyone, please, question or any queries actually related to ARDL and nonlinear ARDL. Anyone? Hi. No question asked.
This tells that things were so clear that there's no need to ask questions.
Yeah, perhaps that's the idea behind it. Or anyhow, just to wow, there's one question in the chat box, perhaps. Yeah, this one in the chat box by this Chin, actually, one of the student here. He asked about in the chat box, Dr. Aftab here, you can see the chat box, but I'll read out for you. Is there any specific condition when must use NARDL? Kind of condition, or maybe meaning that why adopt NARDL in that case? Just ask about that basic.
Thank you, Jane.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. Of course, as we talk in the motivation of research, that these situations where we, on the basis of theory, expect that the relationships are like not so linear. For example, it's known in the financial markets that sometimes particular expectations prevails. So this makes the relationship not so linear. Similarly, there's a norm. I quoted this Keynes that the behavior of economic variables is more like no real, that there is a frequent recessions in the economy, and when we study the recessions, basically the recovery phase is slow as compared to the recession itself when there is downturns. So this is a difference that about this, that when there's no symmetry, that if we segregate the variables into increase and decrease, the increase in variable has having a different impact as compared to the decrease. So then it's must that we should look for more than just linear models, that what we can more explore from the relationship. So in this way, basically, this is all about the theory behind the relationship you are studying, that you should care about that what kind of expectations you are going to build on the basis of your literature review, that this relationship can be this way or that way. So besides this, basically talking about the conditions, normally basically NARDL have the same conditions like ARDL, that when you have a mixed case of integration, like you have some variables which are stationary at level, some variables which are stationary at first difference. So one is that you take the first difference of the variables which are stationary at first difference, but in this way, basically there is a possibility of loss of information. So that's why instead of taking this first difference, you use the variables at the level. So ARDL is flexible to accommodate this issue, that you can use this mix order 1 and order 0 cases.
Right. I hope that explain the necessity of using NARDL as compared to certainly it have some specific condition in that sense. I hope it bring up a clear cutting. So any more question that anyone perhaps want to ask, especially because the idea behind of application for this particular research that was also built upon the interesting part about it is about the NARDL, the selling point about it from the linear towards the non-linear perspective. Any more question for anyone, for Dr. Aftab here? Right. Just for information, Dr. Aftab, we have I exposed them also to ARDL, but not the NARDL. The ARDL in the class, we did discuss on the ARDL in the class, but not for the NARDL. Yeah, that's why it's pretty interesting for you to explain that the NARDL for them to have a different perspective of the ARDL as compared to the nonlinear alternative. I would say, I will use the word alternative. Right. So any more questions? We can take a few more questions before we ended up the session. Right. As we don't want to let the session too long, dragging too long. Any more questions for Dr. Aftab here? So again, it's a chance for you to ask anything, or maybe some you want to know a little bit of other kind of opportunities on terms of publication and so on. Any question? Additional question? Anyone? Right, we have one. Just now from Chin. Maybe it's one from the ladies. Perhaps can ask a question to Dr. Aftab here. Okay, there's another one in the chat box. Yeah, there's one question there in the chat box. I'll read out to you, Aftab, Dr. Aftab.
Yes.
Can the question is that, hello doctor, can we use ARDL model in the situation where the dependent variable is I0, independent variable is I1 in this case? Thank you. This is ARDL. Okay.
Mixture. Yeah. This is a mixed case that your variables, some variables are integrated at level and others at first difference. So basically, the only issue that it should not be at second difference. But in case if there is a second difference, then it's not appropriate. But in case it's I0 and I1, ARDL can work. It's okay.
Okay, I hope you have Dr. Aftab have answered your question, Iqmal. Muhammad Iqmal bin Nazri, because means that the ARDL can take the mixture of integration, despite whether they are from the dependent variable or independent variable in this case. Okay. Yeah. Any more question that you want to ask, especially because most of you will deal with the estimation for your final project also coming, or you're doing it also on the way until middle of the year, and certainly maybe some of you would want to consider NARDL in your modeling structure. So that's something to explore and learn. So any more questions anyone want to ask actually before? Maybe one more question if it's, yeah, two from the boys. Have any from the ladies perhaps, to so that it'll be hey, any question from the ladies? Any ladies here that want to ask question for the Aftab here? Anyone? Yes. Okay. Yeah, fully understand, I guess, of your presentation. The presentation must be.
Oh, thank you.
This must be very informative information. Just perhaps, I mean, not really a question or something, just for the sake of this a little bit of discussion here, to just to have some discussion. Oh, we have one here. All right, thank you very much, the lady. um the question is directed to me, actually, so I will just read it out. The question directed to me. You should just pause it up for everyone. Maybe I can. This is the question that I get, but I'll put it here. The question is not from me. I just post it in the chat box. Anyhow, so the question sounds, hello doctor, what other estimation techniques that we can use other than ARDL and NARDL? Just, you know, just for the sake of, again, discussion, perhaps if I can respond to that, Dr. Aftab.
Yeah, actually, Professor Evan is here, so he can tell you a lot of techniques. Basically, sky is the limit of techniques, but the main thing is we should be careful about basically what we are doing. Basically, there's a lot of techniques. This is all about the relevance or rationality, that what is the mind behind that. For example, you are using a survey data, so then simply OLS is fine. But if you are using time series data, then these are few. There's other co-indication techniques. But if you are using panel data, then there is another set of techniques. This is all about your data and research questions, and all about theory and your literature. What is suggested about that? What kind of relationship can be based on your expectations, type of your data. So this is, I think, this is all about your research questions and your data that help you to figure out which technique is relevant. So there's no like, it's not hard and fast rule that which technique you should use. This is all about your data. If you have a simple, just few variables, it's something like correlation is enough. Do you agree, Prof?
Yeah, I think, yeah, certainly upon that question also, actually, that you know, always believe that the methodology, the tools are the tools, the methodology are the methodology. What is more important is what we want to do, what is the data set as been mentioned just now by Dr. Aftab here, and what sort of in the research question that you want to achieve, or the objective that you also want to achieve. That's more important than the tool. So the tool comes, not to say the tools must be there, must be standardized, come later, but what is more important is your research itself, and then you find appropriate tool that fits in the types of data that we have. If you are using time series, if you're using cross section, or you're using panel types of data in that particular sense. That's what been explained by Dr. Aftab, and I totally agree with that. I just added up a few more things on that perspective. All right. So, there any more question we can take? No, but think if there is no other question, yeah, good, and certainly we are very again, on behalf of the class itself, are very thankful for Dr. Muhammad Aftab, who is spending his time to share a little bit about, or I mean, spending his time and sharing about the research and the publication itself. That emphasize on the ARDL and NARDL itself. So it's something that all of you will be able to explore, perhaps in your next research, right? or I mean in your final project itself. Right. So before we go, before we really go, can we have everyone to actually on their camera? We have nice photo taking, virtual photo taking. At least there's a proof, and then they send this to you. I mean, Dr. Aftab later. So you can you stop this sharing first, Dr. Aftab, so that it'll be the screen will be. Right. Can everyone on their camera, please? Those who have their camera ready, please on your camera, put up yourself nicely in the in this particular room today. These are all the young women and men in our faculty. So it's been, I think same thing goes to in your country. I mean, after that, I've not seen them for nearly 2 years now. I've not seen them face to face for nearly 2 years. So we just meet up online. Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. So
there's a lot of online nowadays here as well due to this pandemic.
Yes.
So this is a bit just a new experience.
I mean, this is a new experience. So I've not seen them for nearly 2 years. Hopefully, we'll see them in the next semester to come. So that at least we can meet them face to face for the past 2 years. Yeah, I've not seen you also for nearly what 3-4 years back when we meet in Singapore. So
exactly.
So we have not seen each other. So hopefully one day I'll go to Pakistan, or you come back here to Malaysia again.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So let's see how many pages that we have. Oh, we have 3 pages. Oh, 5 pages. Oh wow, we have a total of more than 100 students here. So those of you who also want to tag the pictures, you can go ahead, but I'll tag mine at this moment. So here at the first page, just maintain your smile. 1, 2, 3. Right, we have page number 2. Let's go for page number 2. Page number 2. Let me see. Page number 2. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you. Still remain on your smile. Page number 3. Remain on your smile. Yeah, smile. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. Wow. It's a lot of Okay, page number 3 here. Number 4. Page number 4. Okay, not much of you on the camera. And number 5 here also, none of you on the camera, so it's okay. So we have 3 pages which actually have full cameras on. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Aftab. Is there anything last that you want to say before we go off for the day?
Yeah, it was nice to see you after a long time, and I hope to see you soon physically. So thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to interact with your students, and I hope we would have more such sessions in future. Basically, this is a more innovative way to interact. You may also join us sometime here in Pakistan in some conferences. So sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for making your time again. So I think we should thank Dr. Aftab in our way. Whether I mean, if you're on your camera, we just clap our hand. If